The mind has, we all know that already, about 60,000 thoughts, and it keeps giving them. And if we believe these thoughts, then it's a problem. The biggest piece of our suffering is believing our thoughts, because the mind doesn't even make sense. It keeps giving. And control our thoughts. That would be great if we could, because we would only think happy thoughts, right? If you're sad and if you keep thinking, oh, my eggs are bad, it affects the quality of the eggs.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Ask Julie Ryan Show. It's where we blend spirituality and practicality to help you live a life of purpose and joy. Today, we have Saskia Röell with us. She's a former professor of behavioral and social sciences in the Netherlands, and she's gone on to become a world-renowned mind, body, spirit fertility expert. Now, that's a mouthful. She helps women around the world become mothers. Over the years, I've admired Saskia's success rate with her clients and have often recommended her. So if you or someone you know is trying to conceive, this conversation is for you. Please remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this episode with your family and friends. Saskia, I'm so excited to have you on this show, girl. I think I've been on your show like 4 times or something. So it's about time. Welcome.
I love it. I'm so excited. Yay. It feels like you're sitting with me in my kitchen.
Absolutely. Well, we've done this so many times that I feel like, we are our sisters from a different mister kind of a thing together. Yeah. I wanted to have you on the show today just because of you've done such a great job of connecting the mind, body, spirit equation together, not only for fertility and pregnancy, but I think with bigger implications too about overall health. So that's why I think it makes sense for everybody to listen. We've all known women, whether they be us or our daughters or now our granddaughters sometimes, that are dealing with fertility issues. And the bigger picture is what's going on with them, and then what's going on really with any kind of disease or illness or a medical condition. So that's why I'm so excited to chat with you today about all of that.
Yeah, me too. I'm looking forward to it.
What does the mind, body, spirit connection mean to you, and how does it affect fertility and pregnancy?
Yeah, to me, it makes so much sense that our body, mind, and spirit are connected, and that when we are in that alignment and when we are in that, so to say, embodiment, we are aligned and things flow. But what I see in my work as a fertility coach is that when there is interference or misalignment, because in the mind there's a lot going on, it affects the body. And this is a really overlooked piece, I believe, in the medical world, where a lot of women don't know that, they're not blocked physically. It's not their hormones. It's not their gut biome. They've checked all of that, but then they keep miscarrying, or they try for 4 years. I just got a Instagram message from a woman, and she said, I've tried for 4 years and I can't get pregnant, but I have one son. But then in her history, she had an abortion. So where my mind goes, because she's healthy, everything is checked, could it be that there is a trauma block? What's invisible, of course, for the outside, but where I don't know, I haven't spoken to her, there may be guilt, or it's unprocessed, or that's where in my work, I find it so fascinating to see results where sometimes they try for 10 years and they don't understand and they keep trying. They do 16 IVFs. Of course, that doesn't work. If there's a mental block or an emotional block or a body mistrust block or a trauma block, it interferes. The body, mind, spirit isn't connected as it should, because I believe we are fertile. Yeah, makes a lot of sense to me. And in my life, of course, it makes also a lot of sense. I have 5 children. I was very blessed, 4 sons, 1 daughter. But yeah, if I'm blocked in my mind, it will show up in my work, or it will show up in my body, or the connection is there, or in my soul. Yeah. To me, I live with this, Julie.
Yeah. Oh, I know. And you talk to your clients every day about this kind of thing. Is that why? And I know multiple women just in my sphere of friends and family who had a child, had what they called secondary infertility. In some instances, they adopted a child and then boom, all of a sudden they ended up getting pregnant. Is that what's going on in a lot of those instances? Because they didn't do anything different medically.
No, but maybe they had a lot of stress going on, and then they allowed the stress to go, or they opened their mind in a different way, and they got pregnant. Sometimes they say, oh, get a dog. I always feel a little bit like, doesn't completely work that way, but it will take your mind off the obsessiveness, because here's what happens. I call it the iceberg theory, is like where, or the infertility iceberg theory, as I've called it, where on the top, say, there of the iceberg is the body. This is where we can see everything. This is where they say, oh, you have poor egg quality, or oh, you have low AMH, or oh, your hormones aren't in check. Say that's the body, but the whole piece underneath, that's where these invisible, for example, in secondary infertility, it could be a mindset block where a woman becomes obsessed with getting pregnant. But in the meanwhile, I had a client with secondary infertility, and the first child was conceived really fast and easy, but it was so hard to deal with that first year, and she lost control of herself, of everything. So she literally said to me, it feels, if I have a second baby, it will destroy me. So we had to do a lot of work here in mindsets. And in the meanwhile, she developed a body mistrust block, of course, because she kept getting a negative pregnancy test. So she couldn't get pregnant. So there's blocks that one spirals in another. But that's with secondary infertility. I have almost like 95% success, Julie, and that's odd. But to me, it's so explainable, because there's a reason. And usually it's either during the whole pregnancy, or right after, or birth. There's an explanation. And if you resolve that, then energy flows, right? To me, it makes total sense what I do, working with unexplained infertility, because there's a reason, and it interferes. And then what is underneath, what you can't see in this iceberg, that's where the subconscious lives. And that's where the subconscious rules the body. That's where we can find the answers. And I zoom right in there when I have a client. Like my x-ray is within 5 minutes, not the physical x-ray, but the energetic x-ray. And I pinpoint exactly what's going on. And we can figure that out.
Right. Because you're using your intuition to help people heal themselves, help women heal themselves. And so you're getting guided through your intuition to pinpoint, boom. And as you know, I work with a lot of women as well on the energetic side who are dealing with fertility and wanting to be moms. And I send every one of them to you. Every one of them.
I love that.
We'll work on the physical level. And I've been doing that for years, as you know. They all know about Miss Saskia. You need to talk to this woman. She can help you, because your success rate is just off the charts with helping women get pregnant and have babies. Not just get pregnant, but also end up being a mom. Because I know there's a percentage of your clients that have had multiple miscarriages, and they're frustrated by that.
They have. And the thing is, with multiple miscarriages, of course, I go from the fact that physically they're okay, right? They're checked, so the hormones are fine, but why do they keep miscarrying, or what's going on underneath? And yes, I have my intuition where I can zoom into that, but there's also often a logical explanation. I find it logical, right? If there's a deep fear. I had one woman and she kept miscarrying, but she had secondary infertility. But the birth, she almost died. So the logic is here that her body doesn't feel safe. That's what I always say. She doesn't feel safe to birth again because she thinks, what if I die? Well, the body listens to your thoughts. So the body will say, no, we won't do that. So they block. Unless she releases that deeper trauma block, then yes, then she can conceive. So it's interesting. I do an exercise with my clients, and I guide them through the stages of pregnancy. And some, I have them visualize, embody, like, how does it feel? You're 3 months pregnant, and then they come to month 5, and they're like, oh no, I can't see that. No, I can't go there. Well, for me, then we got to do some work here, because if she can't go past month 5, it will always end before that, right? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Because the body listens. There's this fear, so the body contracts. The body is either in contraction, in fear, fight and flight, or the body is open to conceive. And that's why the success rate is high, because it takes a little bit, of course, to get you from your body running on the fear program to going on the open to conceive program. So you go from, I can't get pregnant, I'm infertile, to, yes, I can get pregnant. And you embody your body like, yeah, I can get pregnant. And I think when I revert back to myself, most fertility coaches come from they couldn't conceive, they had a problem, and they figured that out, and they become coaches. I come from the opposite direction, where since I think was a baby, I always felt so fertile, regardless if I was or not. I don't even know. I think once later on, a hormone doctor said, I don't understand why you had all these pregnancies. And I'm like, yeah, but it was my mantra, like, I'm so fertile. And I think there's something to say for that, which, I want all my clients to get to that point.
Let's dissect that for a minute, because I know you taught at the university level in the Netherlands. Tell us about that, and tell us how that prepared for you in the work that you do now with women who you're helping become moms.
The connection is, it was an experimental psychology, and I'm super interested in that. It's always been a passion of mine. And this was where they were studying behavior and how you could change behavior. And I think I have a deep interest in our behavior. I have a deep interest in how the subconscious mind informs our body, and how our bodies are a manifestation of all of what's going on. It's just not a body where we were influenced by our thinking, our behavior, our emotions. And that's where I've kept going on. I'm still studying, until this day, because it fascinates me. But it has everything to do with fertility, because our fertile energy, or if you give birth, for example, if you're in fear, the body locks up. If you are in fear, and they call it contraction, right? Which I find so odd and wrong, because it's expansion, contraction, but contraction is like, so you tighten up. So how can a woman birth when you tighten up? But it's this movement when you birth. And I birthed my babies in half an hour, and the only reason why I did that, because when I gave birth and I looked at my belly, I couldn't figure it out in my head because I didn't understand how can you birth a big baby? How can you? I didn't understand. I birthed at home. So then I thought, well, my body probably knows because I do not know. I do not get it. The midwife came and she said, oh, you can push. And I'm like, okay, body, you take care of this. And this is the short story, and it's the surrender. But our bodies are so wise. So I birthed them out in like a big ohm where I just watched like my body do it. I'm like, you know what? I'm out of here. I do not know this. So my body took over my body. Yeah, my body wanted this baby out, right? It was time, and my body started to do it. It's just, I squatted down and I did it. So I wish I could have that level of surrender in my life, Julie, but those moments I had it where the birthing went. But it's the body, it's so wise, but we screw it up with our mind.
Well, I think you bring up a really good point because every woman I know, myself included, perhaps excluding you, at the end of the pregnancy, we all have had the thought of, oh God, I got to get this baby out of here now. Whoa. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, trillions of women have done this. Maybe not trillions, but billions, certainly. Probably trillions at this point. Trillions of women have done this and they've survived. Ryan, you can too. And every one of my girlfriends who's given birth, we all laugh about that, but we all had the same thought. And I only birthed one, my Jonathan, but I have friends that have several kids, and they said they had that thought every time. Is that a cultural thing?
I don't know what it is, and I can tell you that every birth, I would go like, oh my God. And then the friends would say, well, you just pooped them out. I'm like, I have to get in that mind space, but oh boy. And I have a small frame, but I had 8.5 pound. One of them was 8.5 pound baby. I mean, with him, we were having dinner. It was 9:45. We had dinner. He was overdue. I mean, he was 11 days overdue. We're having dinner, and they're like, do you want a dessert? I'm like, oh, I don't think so. I feel my belly, and I don't know. I said to my husband, let's go home. And we went home. And we opened the door, and my water broke, and I ran upstairs, and my husband's like holding his hands underneath me, and I squatted down. It was 9:45 when we were at the restaurant, and the baby was born 10 past 10. So you can imagine how fast. There was just, okay, go for it, do it, body. And our bodies can, but with our minds, it's in the way. And I think surrender is something so incredibly, but every single time with every baby, I was like, oh my God, will I pull this off? Because I gotta get in that right space of do it. So yeah.
I love it. Well, back to that. What is it about the mind? I always say that our thoughts create our reality. What's going on there? And you've talked about several instances where once we got the thoughts lined up correctly, the body just followed suit. I use the example a lot of watching a scary movie or a sad movie. And I use the example of Terms of Endearment in the 80s when that movie came out. Did you see that movie?
I
Shirley
did.
MacLaine.
I don't know anymore. But what I watched it. Yes.
Oh my God! It was so sad. It was so sad. Or Steel Magnolias, same thing. And I remember just being in a movie theater and holding my breath because I thought I am going to just start wailing here and I'll just disturb everybody around me. And I knew it was pretend. I knew it was a movie. I knew it was Hollywood magic, but it affected my emotions and my body so much. So what is going on there? Why does that happen with fertility and with everything else?
Our mind, unfortunately, I think the mind is the worst problem, because we leave our body and we go in our mind. And I'm saying this as if I master it, and I do not. I mean, I'm a piece of work myself, but I do know that my mind is, the mind has, we all know that, probably about 60,000 thoughts, and it keeps giving them. And yeah, if we believe these thoughts, then it's a problem. The biggest piece of our suffering is believing our thoughts, because the mind doesn't even make sense. It keeps giving. And I mean, control our thoughts, that would be great if we could, because we would only think happy thoughts, right? If you think I'm too old and you keep this is what I teach my clients. I don't believe in affirmations. I think affirmations are great if you've released your deeper fears underneath. Yeah, then you can do that. But for example, if you think, oh, I am too old, you're not going to say I'm young, because you don't believe that. The mind will reject that. But if you open the mind slightly, the mind is curious. That's a very interesting thing. The mind is curious. So if you would say, what if I'm the perfect circumstances and age to conceive? That is entertainable, right? You can think, oh, yeah, maybe, yeah. And then then I say, okay, find 3 good reasons why that could be true. Well, I still ovulate. I get my periods. I am healthy. And you start practicing that. It's like this is what I do with my clients, rewiring their minds. That's the foundation. And then when they rewire their minds, at some point, I had one client and she had many failed IVFs. And she even said to me, oh, I know when I had these IVFs, I kind of knew it would fail. So then we start rewiring our mind, taking away, releasing the deeper fears. At some point, she said, I saw somebody who was pregnant outside. And for the first time, I thought, wow, this is me in a little while. Guess what? She did get pregnant, and it happened. But it's the rewiring of the mind. I mean, it's not hocus pocus. I say this is scientifically based. If you start to rewire your mind and it starts to get consistent, right, where you're not halfway your cycle, you're going to flip to hopelessness. And then for 2 weeks, you're hopeless, and then you start hoping again. No, where you start rewiring the mind and you rewire the body. And what the cool thing is it impacts everything, because your eggs are, some of my clients, they say, have really low egg quality. And you can improve that. That's so fascinating, because the egg you release, I always say, in April is the egg in January releases the egg in April to ovulate. For 4 months, for 120 days, this egg is traveling. If you're anxious all the time, and if you're sad, and if you keep thinking, oh, my eggs are bad, it affects the quality of the eggs. And that's where women have a lot of power, but they need to learn the consistency. But you can do so much before, I say, go to IVF, or before donor eggs or anything, because donor eggs, I have seen, can work, but sometimes don't work, because you plant a good egg into a body, into a woman that's wired with, what if I miscarry? And what if I don't trust my body? What if it goes wrong? And on and on and on. And it's not aligned. And then, yeah, they miscarry. So I've seen how that works. Yeah.
Well, it seems to me that when we have a negative thought, and I teach this, and you know this, my 2-minute rule, when we have a negative thought, is whether it's a rational fear or an irrational fear, because any negative thought's always based in fear. we go into fight or flight. And what happens from a physiological standpoint, we're releasing the stress hormones, our blood is draining from our brain. We're not thinking clearly and all of that. So it's going to have, it seems to me, as a cascading effect on not only from an emotional standpoint, but since thoughts create our reality, it's going to affect physiologically. And if they're heightened cortisol levels and things like that, that's not good to conceive, I would imagine.
It impacts the whole hormonal panel, but I am not into, I mean, I know of the physical aspects and all of that, but I know how it impacts the fertile energy, because the body says if it's in fight and flight, it's not safe. So what you will see is, okay, so then the body is going to kind of stop the egg production, or it's not going to go on full swing, because the body said, well, why would we? Because I'm on fight and flight, I'm in fear. And that impacts fertile energy very much. I mean, it impacts, if we go back to the birthing, they say as soon as women walk into the hospital, this is scientifically proven, immediately the contractions stop, because they're like, oh, and it makes sense, because there's too much light. The body doesn't like that, because I think back in the days we would kind of make it dark. So there's all these things that happen because there's fear coming up, and in fear you don't birth. Yeah, and fear contracts the body. So yeah, it's so true what you're saying.
Well, and we've all been trained to think in probably the last 100 years or so, maybe even less, here in America, especially, that, oh, you don't want to birth at home because if what if something happened and you need to be in the hospital? So we've all been trained. I was born in a hospital. My parents, who were born in the 1920s, were born in a hospital. So I think that we, especially here, have been trained that that's where you have your baby, is in the hospital. And to your point earlier, you come into that environment and it's just, sometimes it's really frightening. Yeah. And I think hospitals are doing things to make it more comfortable. They're trying to have been for a long time, with the birthing suites, and you can bring in the music and all that kind of stuff. But when you get there, usually you're in the hospital because somebody's sick or there's an emergency. So I would think that affects the brain as well, going into the fight or flight and the fear component. I never thought about it that way before. Interesting concept.
I even think if we would have animals that are in the birthing process and suddenly you're going to move them to a whole different environment and lights are on, I can almost sense that, of course, they would contract. Now, I'm Dutch, so this is my benefit, of course. And I remember I had my first son when I lived in Taiwan, and I'm this young girl, 31 years old, and I go to a hospital, and I went to this American hospital, and they already planned my C-section. And I was like, why do I have to have a C-section? Why would that be? Well, it's safer, it's better. And all my girlfriends at that time, they were like expat girlfriends. There were a few Dutch and English and whatever. They were all planned for C-sections. And I'm like, no, that's not what I'm going to do. But my dad was a doctor. So all the babies in our house, and I'm one of 5, they were all born. So for me, it was like, I think even a body experience of, babies are born at home. And I didn't know any better that was how it happened. My grandmother had 7 children, and I think all of them were born at home. So that's kind of installed in my brain too. So I had an advantage. So I didn't want to, I went to a Chinese hospital. There I birthed my first baby, and the rest I was like, I do this at home. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense that if you're programmed like that, you want to be safe. And I don't blame women, but I do know that birthing is a sacred art, and I'm very sad that it's lost, and that the way it's gone now.
I think of the rice paddy worker women. They say they'd squat, they'd have the baby, they'd slap the baby like in a backpack on their back, and they'd keep working in the rice
That's how I
paddies.
did it. I
And
mean, oh, water breaks. I sit down and I push this baby out, and that's that. Um, but they literally do that.
are you seeing a trend in your clients that more are using midwives and getting back kind of to the ancient, or no?
No, no. They all go to the hospital, and they're so used to the hospital because they are, yeah. But I encourage them when they get pregnant. I have a program, Stick to Me Baby program, that I gift them. And then part of it is that I teach them, I talk about birth as well, because I think if they want to take the chance, it's gorgeous. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm finding that a lot of my clients are hiring midwives. And
Oh, wow.
and I, like you,
Amazing.
work with women from all over the world, and I know you do as well. And it's very much becoming a trend that there will be a midwife in the room at the hospital. Yeah. Okay, let's back up a minute, because I want to talk to especially the women that want to be moms. I mean, the birthing thing is one thing, but we got to get there first. And I know you utilize past life regression work, Akashic records, shamanic, Reiki, Eastern healings, among other methodologies to help your clients. Why? How did that come about? What are you doing? Can you give us a couple of examples of maybe things that you did with clients that really helped them?
Yeah, it was very interesting because I was an avid student. My first interest was very much like how are all the things that we have going on in our body related, what emotions are attached, or what past lives are attached, and what is going on. So that was always there. And I did a lot of soul purpose coaching where I helped women, also men, look at what was blocking them. Why, if you want to write a book, what is in the way? Why can't you? What is in the way? Where can we look deeper? Because the technique we can all get down. So I always wanted to look deeper. And in the meanwhile, I did a lot of healing with my hands because that came natural since I was very young. I was very intuitive, so I could hear things or see things. So that was a very natural progression of who I was, who I am. And then in my work, there were more and more fertility clients coming to me, and it was fascinating. And then what was so cool, I started using all these different techniques where I'm like, okay, so I had one client, for example, she had one child, and she said, I'm so obsessed and I'm so scared. I cannot leave this child out of my sight. And in the meanwhile, for 5 years or 4 years, she was trying to get pregnant, but either it was a miscarriage or it never worked. And she couldn't leave this kid alone. And she said, well, my neighbor is taking care of my daughter, but I'm just worried sick. So I'm like, well, that is interesting because that is probably a past life where something happened maybe with her child. And she was a private client of mine. We did a past life regression. She released it, and it was just 100% change, where she went from being scared that kid could not play anywhere to suddenly she said, well, somebody asked if my daughter could play, and this kid could play. And she was a different person. She became pregnant, I think, within 6 weeks later. She was pregnant because suddenly all that fear, it wasn't there anymore, and her body opened up to conceive. So that is an interesting example where that was clearly how, we released that fear and how that happened. Another example is where this was a woman who, this was not a past life, but she kept trying to conceive with IVF and she couldn't. And I asked her about her history, and well, there was nothing there. And she said, well, I've worked with a therapist and no, I'm good. And then I'm like, I think something happened when you were 21. And she said, oh, yeah, something did, but I'm over that. It's good. I'm over that. And I'm like, I don't think so. What happened? And she was raped and she became pregnant and she aborted the baby. Well, it was in her body that she did this, and she felt guilty, and it was still in her body. So that's where then, I did womb healing, and I do everything basically on distance because I have clients all over the world. Back in the days, this is really back in the days, 20 years ago, I had my office and my treating room, and then people would come in and I would feel with my hands. And I love all that, Julie, and, do all that stuff and use sound bowls, and people came to me in person. Now they don't. So yeah, we did womb healing with this woman, and I can do it like that. I can feel into the womb. I can read the wombs. Like, I do that with every client, basically, where I read like what's going on in her womb, where is there still energy in there, where is my attention, and we have to clean the womb because the womb needs to be a beautiful space to conceive the baby. So it's amazing because now I use all the things I've learned in different modalities, whatever is up with the client. I'm sure you do the same. You grab from here or here, but it's very organically. I'm not so much into like, oh, now this is shamanic or this is Reiki or this is that. It's just, okay, let's do this, let's do that. But there is also a ton of, which is very down to earth, where we retrain the brain, reset, where we release deeper trauma. I work a lot with color because color is very, very powerful, color healing. But yeah, it works. And you know that this works. Yeah.
Well, and I do the same thing. I'm never with anybody in person unless they're a family member, usually. And the only one I live with now is my husband. So it's all distance, but I don't notice a difference. Do you, between the in person and the distance? It's the same thing. It's all energy, right?
Me, it's easier because I can listen really well, and I'm not distracted by anything. It's in our listening. It works better for me this way, and it's much faster. Much faster. We're not holed up in any way, right? We can just do our thing. I always say I'm like a surgeon, where I go in, take it out, close it up, and now we're good.
Yeah, same thing. I see something, there's a healing, boom, let's go. And then it integrates into the body. But you're not healing anything. I'm not healing anything. We're helping the person heal themselves is what's going on. And I find that fascinating. And no doctor heals anybody else either, or any medical provider of any sort. We're all helping the person heal themselves. And to your point earlier, we don't know what their past lives have been. We don't know what their path is that they're exploring in this lifetime. Certainly when they come to you, they're exploring fertility and pregnancy issues that they're wanting to really dissect and get help with. And that's what you do. You help them with that. I got a couple of questions about what you mentioned with those examples. First of all, what do you remember what the past life was? That one client had a past life and then she got pregnant 6 weeks later.
Yeah, it's so funny. You ask me that now. So I don't remember those things, but it comes in now. So I get it. I think her child drowned, and she was there, so she was still in blame that she hadn't paid enough attention. I can give you another example, which I vividly remember. This woman, she had 2 children, but her past life but the births were horrendous. So every time she gave birth, it was horrible. It took 3 days, and I regressed her to a past life where she was at war and she was on a horse, and the baby needed to be born, but it was war, so she had to go. So she needed to get on that horse in labor, and she couldn't. She have lost a child. It was a horrible experience. So when we released that experience from going 3 days in birthing, she went to 3 hours, and it was amazing. When you release it. It's very powerful. It's not in the body anymore because you hold it.
Yeah. Do you find that when you do identify a past life like that, and I do the same thing, and I'll get where it was and when it was and a little bit about what happened. Do you find that as soon as you illuminate it, that it's eradicated? Do you find that it heals right away as soon as we illuminate it?
Sometimes they need more, because back in the days, I don't do that anymore, even though I may pick that up again. I would do a few, like also do a past life then where, for example, say this is a past life, a woman can't get pregnant, and things happened in the past. I see what they see, and sometimes they don't see it, but I can see what they see in these past lives. But then there is this pattern, somehow it ends up in infertility. But then when we release that, I also want them in a past life where they were so fertile and where they had many children. So we reactivate that in the body too, because the body remembers, and then we bring that back, that memory in the body. Yeah.
That makes tons of sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Interesting how you combine that with multiple past lives. When I get somebody, and I don't do regression, I do what I call as a past life scan. So I envision myself in this endless hallway, and we'll ask a question. And in the hallway, very narrow walls, very tall ceiling, there are these 12-inch by 12-inch squares lining the walls vertically and horizontally in columns. And I'll say, show me the past lives that Susie had that are affecting her infertility issues. And those mirrors, Saskia, will come out from the wall as if they're on a hydraulic arm. And then I'll say, show me the one that correlates the most. That one will come out the farthest. And then I'll envision myself going into it, and I'll be given the scene of what we're talking about. So I think we're doing the same thing, just in a different way. But I love that you're saying, okay, let's override that neural pathway that I can't conceive, and go to a past life where I had 15 kids or however many kids. Yeah. Interesting.
Absolutely.
I love that.
But there's so many ways, which is, sometimes I think, you could just do all these different things with them, because there's amazing healing modalities.
But you're led, it seems to me that you're led into what technique to use with that client at that moment in time. And the same thing happens with me too. I call those divine downloads. It's like I got God giving me information, spirit feeding information into my head at the same time that I'm talking and working with the client. Real quickly, and then I want to change gears for a minute. Real quickly, you mentioned color therapy. I'm fascinated by that. Can you give us an example of a client with whom you use color therapy, and how did it work?
Yeah. Color therapy, of course, back in the days, I started with real color lamps, right? Because I would sense what color they need. And then we all know the study that colors healing and do all that. So that there were physical colors on the people, and now it's long distance. So an example, I had one of my clients who I guided her into the womb. She had 16 failed IVFs. She kept doing it and kept doing it. An IVF is not a numbers game, right? Because if it's not working, well, what's going on? And if it's not physical, well, if it's an emotional block or a mental block, then you don't get pregnant with IVF. I think that's why IVF fails so often. And I'm not against IVF, but if you haven't looked deeper what's going on, then why would IVF work? So anyway, so she had 16 IVFs, and we looked into her womb, and her womb looked so depleted and so dry. And I said to her, I felt that was the color we needed. I said, imagine that there's this pot of gold with liquid, fertile gold, and you paint the walls of your womb with this gold. And she did that. And she designed her womb like in this most magnificent palace temple, which was awesome. We also did other work, her mindset, and she rewired her brain and all of that. And she had also emotional blocks. She had a very big fear of motherhood. Would she be a good mom? All that. So that I see that a lot. So we did all of that. And then she went back to the clinic, and the 17th IVF, boom, it worked. And the whole clinic was raving, she said. It was amazing. She was then pregnant, and she has, brought that as a beautiful full term. Yeah.
Great. Okay. I want to switch gears for a minute and just do rapid fire different infertility issues. You give me a quick answer. Boom. I don't want to spend a lot of time on each one, but let's do them quickly. What are the four major fertility blocks that you talk about?
That I talk about is the mindset block, when you go in obsessive thinking. It's the body mistrust block, where you start doubting, like, oh, my body doesn't work, my womb is not good, my eggs are too old. The emotional block, where you go from hopeless to hopeful, this roller coaster riding. And then the trauma block, where you have unexplained fears, like, what if I die, or what if I'm not a good mom, or blocks like that. And they interfere 100% with fertility. They do, because they bring you on the fear program.
Great. Second question. The age of conception seems to be getting older and older, especially in our Western societies. Is that an issue?
Well, it's an issue if you believe that you're too old. And I'm in the position where my clients are usually over 40, and they come to me, they're 46 or 47, and they say, am I too old? Well, I don't know. If they 100% believe that, for sure they are. But if they still, their body functions, there's possibilities. And I've seen a lot of miracles. So, where it can become a problem is, where the doctors won't treat them anymore.
Yes, I've heard that from several clients. Yes. What if a woman is told that her eggs aren't any good, or a man has a low sperm count?
Oh, I love that. Well, number one, low sperm count. My standard answer is always, you only need one sperm. So I think there's lots of supplements and good food that can change that. A low egg count or low egg quality, it's a specialty of mine, because I have like a mini program where a woman, for hardly anything, they can improve their egg count naturally, because I'm a believer that, if you watch your mind, If you change your emotions, your whole body starts to be different, and it impacts the eggs. So you can do a ton about that. That's no problem.
I have a couple of clients in the last, I would say probably 2 years, two come to mind, where they had something and they lost an ovary and they were told that they wouldn't be able to conceive. So we regenerated their ovary with stem cell energy, Saskia, and it had all new eggs in it. Both of them have babies now. Both of them got pregnant, had perfect births. Their babies are doing great. And the thing that was so fascinating about that to me was when I watched those ovaries get regenerated, they were full of new eggs. So it was like we were giving them ovaries of a 25-year-old or maybe even younger, all their same DNA. I mean, everything. It was amazing. So I've seen that twice so far in the last couple of years using stem cell energy with that. Okay, two last questions. Why did we incarnate?
Oh, I think our souls are so eager to learn, but it's the soul's journey, and we incarnate in where our soul needs to grow. And that's why we should take the lessons that are on our path. And in the fertility journey, there is a lot of soul growth. I do a lot of soul work with them as well, because they forget their soul. They are only like thinking about the body, and your baby soul chooses you because of who you are at soul level. But it's the growth. This is my idea. My youngest son, I was pregnant of him. I had 4 kids pregnant of him. And at 3 months, I miscarried him, and I always felt his energy probably was too big for me to hold yet. I got pregnant again, I think 5 or 6 months later of him, but there was soul growth to do, and soul growth it can be tough, but you got to.
Absolutely. Well, I think you're extraordinary. I think the work you do is just magnificent, which is why I always refer my clients that are interested in conceiving and being a mom to you. You're my first referral. I send them to you. How can everybody find you and learn more about you and the work that you're doing?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. I think you go to getpregnantnow.com. Get pregnant now. That's what you want, probably. If you want to have a baby, getpregnantnow.com. And I have a super good 15-second quiz where you can diagnose yourself, where you can see, oh, do I have a mindset block or a trauma block? And I explain a lot about it. So you get videos and all that stuff. And then still you go to getpregnantnow.com/quiz. And then you have your answer, like, why am I not getting pregnant? Maybe you don't, but maybe you do have. There's a mindset block or how it affects you. And and I love to talk to you. So then there you can set up a talk, and we can see if and how I can help you. Yeah. I believe every woman is fertile. It's just your innate nature, but it's like almost like you're maybe tuned to just to the wrong radio station, right? I have these stations that I like here. And then if there's too much static on the line if I'm not fully attuned. So we create that alignment, and where your body opens to conceive, because that's how we're born, right? We are fertile. Infertility, I don't like that diagnose either. It's just, let's get you pregnant now.
Right. Well, and as I mentioned when we started our conversation, I have quite a few clients who are wanting to conceive themselves. And I have just as many, maybe even more, mothers and grandmothers who want to help their daughter or granddaughter on her path as she's wanting to be a mom, because it affects the whole family with that stress that comes with it when they've been given some diagnosis. And I love that you say, hey, everybody's fertile. It doesn't matter what you've been diagnosed with or about. Let's have a conversation. Let's see what we need to do to get you pregnant now.
Yeah, it is. It is such a, well, they say it's such an invisible struggle where women feel down to their core. They feel touched in their femininity because it's really something that affects them very deeply. And I think the whole family it affects very deeply. It's this innate thing you want to do and you expect from yourself and your body that you should be able to. But there's so much more. Of course, the physical aspect, but then it's explainable in 99%. And I wrote a book, The Naked Truth of Unexplained Infertility, where it says 55 stories, but it's, I think, 76 stories of women where they had these fears, or I write all the different stories. It's a storybook. So that is something of anyone. There's Kindle, I think it's $2.99 or whatever. I don't even know. But it's super readable. I hear from women, they read it in one go, and it's so encouraging because there are stories of women who had the most horrible fertility journeys, and they are moms now. And I believe that we are fertile in nature, and we can get back to that state.
Well, and more so that you believe it, but you've experienced it in helping many, many women around the world realize that as well. So thank you on behalf of humanity for the work that you're doing to help moms become pregnant and help populate the world. All right, everybody, that's it for this week. Sending you lots of love from Sweet Home, Alabama. Mwah! And from Massachusetts, too, where Saskia is. We'll see you next time. To enhance your spiritual journey, click on one of the videos below and remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share with your family and friends.